Middle-earth is a land filled with magic, beauty, and wonder. But lurking in its dark corners are terrifying creatures born of shadow and malice. From ancient beasts to twisted servants of dark lords, these monsters strike fear into the hearts of even the bravest heroes. In this video, we'll take a journey through the darkest parts of Middle-earth and unveil the 7 most horrifying monsters to ever roam its lands. 1. Shelob, the Great Spider. Deep within the mountains that divide Gondor from Mordor lies Cirith Ungol, a dark and foreboding pass that few dare to traverse. Those who do are often unaware of the true horror that awaits them. Shelob, the Great Spider. She is not merely an oversized arachnid, but a malevolent and ancient creature, one whose origins stretch back to the darkest days of Middle-earth's history. Born from the primordial darkness, Shelob is a direct descendant of Ungoliant, the monstrous being who aided Morgoth in the theft and destruction of the 2 trees of Valinor. Unlike her mother, whose hunger for light and power drove her to madness, Shelob's lust is for flesh. Shelob's lair is a death trap, a winding maze of tunnels filled with webs that stretch like veils of death, waiting to ensnare the unwary. Her webbing is as strong as iron, and her lair reeks of decay and death. Many have wandered into these tunnels, and none have returned, save for Gollum, whose twisted soul earned him some form of immunity from the beast. But even Gollum feared her might and cunning. Shelob is described as massive, with a swollen, bloated body that shines with a sickly pale light, as if her very skin is a vessel for the evil that dwells within her. Her many legs are long and sharp, capable of moving with terrifying speed, and her venom is potent enough to paralyze even the strongest warrior in seconds. The hobbits Frodo and Sam, who dared to venture through her lair on their way to Mount Doom, quickly learned the terror that Shelob inspires. She ambushes Frodo, paralyzing him and preparing to feast on his body before Sam heroically intervenes. Yet, despite her apparent bestial nature, Shelob is not without cunning. She is not some mindless beast, but a predator who takes pleasure in the fear and suffering of her victims. She toys with her prey, savoring the terror she inspires before delivering the final blow. Her ability to strike from the shadows, her nearly impenetrable web, and her insatiable hunger for flesh make her one of the most horrifying monsters in Middle-earth. But perhaps what is most chilling about Shelob is that she seems to exist outside of the world's grand conflicts. She serves neither Sauron nor any other dark power, though Sauron tolerates her presence. In a twisted way, she is a remnant of the First Age, a reminder of a time when monsters like Ungoliant roamed freely, unchecked by the forces of light. Shelob is the embodiment of a predatory force of nature, ancient, insatiable, and utterly terrifying. 2. Balrog, the Flame of Udun. In the deep, forgotten depths of Khazad-dûm, an ancient evil lay dormant for centuries, only to be awakened by the greed of the dwarves. The Balrog, Durin's bane, was one of the greatest terrors ever to walk Middle-earth. But to understand the true horror of the Balrog, one must go back to the First Age, when these creatures were not the rogue entities of legend, but servants of Morgoth himself. The Balrog was originally a Maya, a being of great power created by Eru Ilúvatar, the god of Middle-earth, to serve in shaping the world. However, during the corruption of Morgoth, the first Dark Lord, some of these spirits were seduced by his power and became his servants, twisted into demons of flame and shadow. The Balrog became one of the most fearsome lieutenants of Morgoth, leading his armies in the wars against the elves and the forces of good. When Morgoth was finally defeated at the end of the First Age, most of the Balrogs were destroyed. However, some managed to flee, hiding in the deepest, darkest places of the world. The Balrog of Moria, later known as Durin's bane, was one such creature. For thousands of years it slept, buried deep beneath the misty mountains. It was only awakened when the dwarves of Khazad-dûm delved too deep in their search for Mithril, disturbing the ancient demon. When the Balrog awoke, it unleashed its fury on the dwarves, slaughtering their people and claiming Moria as its own. From that day, the once great dwarven kingdom became a place of fear and death. The Balrog, a being of both fire and shadow, is described as a towering figure, cloaked in flames and wielding a fiery whip and sword. Its presence is enough to strike terror into the hearts of even the bravest warriors, for it is not simply a creature of brute strength, but an ancient and malevolent intelligence driven by a deep hatred for all life. Perhaps the most famous encounter with the Balrog comes during the journey of the Fellowship of the Ring. As they attempt to flee Moria, the Balrog confronts them on the bridge of Khazad-dûm. The sight of the creature fills the Fellowship with despair. Even Aragorn, one of the bravest warriors of Middle-earth, hesitates in its presence. Gandalf, recognizing the true nature of the Balrog, stands alone to face it. In their legendary duel, Gandalf and the Balrog battle in one of the most iconic moments of the story. Gandalf sacrifices himself to destroy the creature, knowing full well the danger it poses not only to the Fellowship, but to the world itself. In the end, both fall into the abyss, continuing their battle in the depths of the earth. The Balrog is a monster unlike any other in Middle-earth. Its very nature, half fire, half shadow, makes it a symbol of primordial fear. It is not just a physical threat, but an embodiment of ancient, destructive power, a reminder of the dark days when Morgoth and his servants terrorized the world. Its presence in Moria transformed the ancient dwarf kingdom into a place of terror, and even its defeat by Gandalf could not erase the memory of the horror it wrought. 3. The Nazgul ringwraiths of Sauron. The Nazgul, also known as the ringwraiths, are among the most feared servants of Sauron, embodying the terror of death, darkness, and eternal servitude. Once, they were 9 mortal kings, men who ruled great kingdoms, whose pride and desire for power led them into the hands of Sauron. Each was given one of the 9 rings of power, which granted them great abilities, extending their lives beyond normal human limits. But the rings were a trap, for their power was tied to the one ring, and through it, Sauron slowly corrupted their souls, turning them into his immortal slaves. Over time, the 9 kings lost their humanity, becoming wraiths, undead beings bound eternally to the will of Sauron. They became invisible, existing only as shadows in the physical world, though they could still be perceived by those who could sense the unseen. Their bodies were cloaked in black, their forms twisted and terrifying, but it was their presence that struck the greatest fear. The Nazgul did not need to speak to inspire terror. Their mere approach brought cold, dread, and despair. One of the most horrifying aspects of the Nazgul is their connection to the One Ring. As ringwraiths, they are drawn to the power of the ring like moths to a flame, and they can sense its presence from great distances. Their relentless pursuit of Frodo Baggins and the One Ring is driven by an unyielding compulsion to return the ring to their master. This pursuit, marked by their eerie shrieks and the thunder of their horses' hooves, is enough to freeze the blood of even the bravest warriors. The leader of the Nazgul, the Witch King of Angmar, is the most powerful and fearsome of the 9. His title alone evokes dread, as he once ruled the kingdom of Angmar, bringing ruin and devastation to the northern realms of Middle-earth. It is said that no man can kill him, a prophecy that only adds to the aura of invincibility that surrounds him. Armed with a Morgul blade, the Witch King is capable of inflicting wounds that never fully heal, slowly draining the life and will of his victims. But perhaps the most terrifying aspect of the Nazgul is the nature of their existence. They are not truly alive, but neither are they dead. They exist in a state of perpetual twilight, between the worlds of the living and the dead, eternally enslaved to the will of Sauron. Their immortality is not a gift, but a curse, forever bound to a master they cannot defy, with no hope of release or redemption. As Sauron's power grows, the Nazgul become even more fearsome. Mounted on terrifying winged beasts known as fell beasts, they terrorize the skies, spreading fear across the lands of Gondor and Rohan. Their screeches can paralyze even the bravest soldiers, and their mere presence is enough to turn the tide of battle. The Nazgul represent the ultimate corruption of mortal men, turned into instruments of evil through their own desires for power. They are Sauron's most loyal servants, relentless in their pursuit of his enemies and driven by an insatiable hunger for the One Ring. Their existence is a reminder of the darkness that lies within men, the dangers of ambition and greed, and the price of submitting to evil. 4. The Watcher in the Water, the Guardian of Moria. The Watcher in the Water is one of the most enigmatic and terrifying creatures in Middle-earth. Lurking in the dark, murky waters of the lake outside the west gate of Moria, this monstrous entity is both ancient and malevolent. Little is known about its origins, and it is never fully revealed in any tale, leaving much of its horror to the imagination. But what is clear is that it is a force of pure destruction, guarding the hidden entrance to Khazad-dûm and waiting to strike down any intruder that dares approach. The pool that the Watcher inhabits was not always there. When the dwarves of Moria sealed off the west gate to keep out the encroaching forces of evil, a river nearby slowly changed its course and formed the stagnant pool in front of the gate. Over time, something ancient and evil took up residence there, waiting beneath the still, dark waters for unsuspecting prey. It is unknown if the Watcher is native to Middle-earth, or if it came from somewhere else, perhaps the far-flung dark corners of the world, or even from a time before the world itself was fully formed. The Watcher's appearance is never fully described in Tolkien's writings, adding to its terrifying mystique. What little is known suggests it is a gigantic, tentacled monster, possessing numerous long, slimy limbs that can stretch out of the water to grab its victims. These tentacles are strong and deadly, capable of crushing even the strongest warriors with ease. When the Fellowship of the Ring approaches Moria, it is these tentacles that rise out of the water without warning, swiftly pulling Frodo into the lake. The speed and ferocity of the attack demonstrate the Watcher's immense power and intelligence. It knew exactly who to target, likely sensing the One Ring's presence. The Watcher's intelligence is another source of dread. Unlike many monsters that operate purely on instinct, the Watcher seems to possess a cunning, almost malicious awareness. It does not strike randomly, but with deliberate purpose, as though it has been waiting for the right moment to ambush. This strategic behavior suggests a mind behind the monstrosity, something far more terrifying than a mere animal. When the Fellowship narrowly escapes the Watcher's grasp, the creature displays its true power by smashing the doors of Moria closed, sealing them inside the mines. This act is not only a show of brute strength, but a final, malevolent effort to ensure they cannot escape the dangers that await within. Its ability to manipulate its environment shows the terrifying extent of its influence, as though it commands the very lake it dwells within. There is something inherently unsettling about the Watcher's unknown origins. It seems as if the creature belongs to an older, more primal era of the world, long before the rise of the great kingdoms and the wars of the rings. The idea that ancient, unknowable horrors like the Watcher could still exist, hidden in the forgotten corners of Middle-earth, is a chilling reminder that not all monsters were defeated in the battles of the past. Some, like the Watcher, have merely been waiting, biding their time until they can strike again. The Watcher in the Water taps into a deep, primal fear of the unknown. Its unseen form, its sudden, brutal attacks, and its silent, patient malice make it one of the most horrifying creatures in Middle-earth. Even after the Fellowship escapes its grasp, the Watcher remains, lurking in the dark waters outside Moria, waiting for the next unfortunate soul to wander too close. 5. Smaug, the last great dragon. Smaug is not only the last of the great dragons of Middle-earth, but he is also one of the most fearsome and destructive creatures to ever exist. His legend is vast, and his power is unmatched. While other dragons had roamed the world before him, Smaug stands as the ultimate symbol of greed, malice, and devastation. His very name strikes fear into the hearts of those who know of him, and the tale of how he came to dominate the Lonely Mountain and the vast treasure of Erebor is one of tragedy and terror. Smaug's origins are tied to the great dragons bred by Morgoth during the First Age. Though Morgoth was long defeated by the time Smaug rose to prominence, the legacy of his dragon breeding continued, and Smaug became the last and most powerful of his kind. Described as a fire drake of immense size, Smaug was already feared in Middle-earth long before he descended upon Erebor. His scales are nearly impervious to any weapon, save for a small weak spot hidden beneath his underbelly, though this vulnerability would not be discovered until much later. Smaug's attack on the dwarven kingdom of Erebor is the stuff of nightmares. The dwarves, led by King Thror, had amassed a vast hoard of treasure deep within the mountain. Their wealth became the envy of many, but none desired it more than Smaug. Driven by an insatiable greed, the dragon descended upon Erebor in a fury of fire and destruction. His attack was swift and merciless. The dwarves, known for their resilience and strength, were powerless against the overwhelming might of the dragon. In a matter of hours, Erebor, once the grandest and wealthiest kingdom of the dwarves, lay in ruins. Smaug slaughtered anyone who dared to challenge him, and those who survived fled in terror, including Thorin Oakenshield, the future king of the exiled dwarves. Smaug claimed Erebor as his own and settled atop the vast treasure hoard, where he remained for nearly 2 centuries. He became the ruler of the Lonely Mountain, and the lands surrounding it were laid to waste. The city of Dale, which had thrived in the shadow of Erebor, was destroyed, and its people scattered. For years, Smaug's presence loomed over the region like a dark cloud. No one dared approach the Lonely Mountain for fear of waking the beast, and Smaug's reputation only grew. His greed and malice were legendary, but his intelligence was perhaps even more terrifying. Smaug was no mere mindless beast. He was cunning and cruel, capable of speech, and possessed a keen understanding of the weaknesses of others. When Bilbo Baggins entered his lair, Smaug's interaction with the Hobbit revealed the depths of his intelligence. He immediately saw through Bilbo's riddles and small talk, probing for information about his intentions and the identities of those who sent him. Smaug took perverse pleasure in toying with Bilbo, knowing full well the power he held over the Hobbit. Smaug's arrogance was his defining trait, a product of both his immense power and his unchallenged reign over Erebor. He believed himself invincible, and for nearly 2 centuries he was. His scales were like armor, and his fire could incinerate entire armies. No man, dwarf, or elf could stand against him. It was this overconfidence that ultimately led to his downfall. Bilbo's discovery of the small bare patch on Smaug's belly where his armor of scales was incomplete would later allow Bard the Bowman to exploit this weakness and bring the mighty dragon down. When Smaug finally awoke from his long slumber, enraged by Bilbo's theft of a single golden cup, his fury was terrifying. He unleashed his wrath upon Lake Town, intending to destroy any who dared defy him. His attack was a display of sheer power. The sky lit up with fire, and the city burned beneath his fiery breath. The destruction of Lake Town seemed inevitable until Bard, using the information gathered by Bilbo, fired the fateful arrow that pierced Smaug's vulnerable spot. The great dragon, who had once laid waste to kingdoms, was finally brought down, his body crashing into the ruins of the town he had just destroyed. Smaug's legacy is one of greed, destruction, and terror. His insatiable lust for gold, combined with his overwhelming power, made him one of the greatest monsters in Middle-earth's history. Even in death, Smaug's name continued to inspire fear, and the story of his reign over Erebor became a cautionary tale of the dangers of unchecked greed and the power of evil. Smaug was not merely a dragon. He was the embodiment of avarice and malice, a creature whose terrifying presence cast a shadow over Middle-earth for generations. 6. The Wargs, Wolves of the Dark. The Wargs of Middle-earth are far more than just oversized wolves. They are malevolent, intelligent creatures that often serve as mounts and allies to the orcs of the Misty Mountains and other evil forces. Their very presence signals danger and death, for where wargs prowl, destruction follows. These fearsome beasts are larger and more ferocious than ordinary wolves, with a cunning intelligence that makes them even more terrifying. Their appearance in Tolkien's works is often associated with impending doom, and they have long served as symbols of the wild, untamed, and hostile nature of the dark forces that roam Middle-earth. Wargs are believed to have ancient origins, possibly dating back to the time of Morgoth, when many of the dark creatures that still roam Middle-earth were created or corrupted. Unlike ordinary animals, wargs seem to possess a malicious will of their own, and they are often depicted as being able to communicate with the orcs they ally with, either through speech or a form of primal understanding. This relationship between orcs and wargs is symbiotic in nature. The orcs use the wargs as mounts, and the wargs, in turn, get to satisfy their bloodthirsty instincts by hunting and killing. One of the earliest and most notable encounters with wargs in The Hobbit occurs when Bilbo Baggins, Gandalf, and the dwarves are traveling through the wilds of the Misty Mountains. They take refuge in the trees to escape a pack of wargs that has been hunting them. The wargs gather at the base of the trees, snarling and circling their prey, clearly intent on tearing the travelers apart. The tension in this scene is palpable. These are not mere animals, but predators driven by malice and an almost supernatural intelligence. The wargs then summon their orc allies, and the combination of the two forces creates a deadly threat, one that nearly costs the adventurers their lives. In The Lord of the Rings, wargs play a similarly terrifying role during the journey of the Fellowship. As the group travels through the wilderness of a region, they are ambushed by a pack of wargs sent by Saruman to track and destroy them. The wargs attack viciously, showing no fear of the mighty warriors they face. Even Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, with their formidable combat skills, struggle to fend off the savage beasts. The wargs' sheer size, strength, and speed make them formidable opponents, and their ability to coordinate attacks shows that they are not mere animals, but rather highly intelligent predators. The physical appearance of wargs is described as grotesque and terrifying. They have massive, muscular bodies covered in coarse fur, with large, powerful jaws filled with sharp teeth, capable of tearing through flesh and bone. Their eyes glow with an unnatural light, hinting at the malevolent spirit that drives them. Their howls, echoing through the wilderness, strike fear into the hearts of all who hear them, for they signal the arrival of death and destruction. But it is not just their physical prowess that makes wargs so terrifying. It is their role as agents of chaos. Unlike many of the other monsters in Middle-earth, which are bound to a specific master or purpose, wargs seem to embody a more primal, untamed evil. They represent the wild, savage world outside the bounds of civilization, a place where death comes quickly and without mercy. While Sauron and Saruman can command wargs to do their bidding, the creatures themselves seem to revel in the carnage they cause, as if driven by their own dark desires. The use of wargs as mounts by orcs adds another layer to their horror. The sight of an orc riding a warg into battle is enough to strike terror into the hearts of even the most seasoned warriors. Together, Orc and Warg form a deadly partnership, one driven by hate and destruction. The Warg riders of the Misty Mountains are known for their speed, ferocity, and ruthlessness. When they attack, they do so with no mercy, slaughtering anyone in their path. The idea of Wargs as both mounts and independent predators is deeply rooted in Tolkien's themes of nature and the wild. They are creatures that thrive in the dark, untamed places of the world, where the laws of civilization do not reach. They are the embodiment of the savage wilderness, a reminder that not all of Middle-earth is ruled by kings and laws. There are places where only the strong survive, and where monsters like Wargs roam freely. In the end, Wargs represent one of the most visceral and immediate threats in Middle-earth. They are relentless hunters, driven by a bloodlust that cannot be sated, and their intelligence makes them far more dangerous than ordinary beasts. Whether they are hunting with orcs or prowling the wilds on their own, the presence of Wargs always signals danger, and their savage nature ensures that those who encounter them rarely live to tell the tale. 7. Ungoliant, the devourer of light. Ungoliant is one of the most horrifying and mysterious creatures in all of Tolkien's legendarium. Unlike many of the other monsters in Middle-earth, whose origins are tied to Morgoth or Sauron, Ungoliant seems to come from a place of even deeper, darker evil. Her origins are vague, but it is said that she existed before the world itself, a creature of the void, a being of darkness and insatiable hunger. She is more than just a monstrous spider. Ungoliant is a force of nature, a primordial entity driven by a desire to consume and destroy all light. Ungoliant's story is intertwined with the dark history of the First Age, when Morgoth, the first Dark Lord, sought to destroy the blessed realm of Valinor. Morgoth, who had been imprisoned by the Valar for his crimes, escaped to Middle-earth, but before he could regain his full power, he needed to strike a devastating blow against his enemies. It was Ungoliant, in her hunger for light, who offered him the means to do so. Ungoliant is described as a vast spider-like creature, though she is far more terrifying than any ordinary spider. Her form is said to be cloaked in darkness so deep that it seems to consume all light around her. She is capable of weaving webs of shadow so thick and impenetrable that they can trap even the rays of the sun. Her hunger for light is insatiable, and she devours anything that shines, whether it be the light of stars, the brilliance of jewels, or even the sacred light of the two trees of Valinor. It was this hunger that led her to ally with Morgoth. Together, they traveled to Valinor, where Ungoliant consumed the light of the two trees, plunging the world into darkness. This act of destruction is one of the most catastrophic events in Tolkien's mythos, for the two trees were the source of all light in the world, and their destruction marked the beginning of an age of darkness. As Ungoliant fed, she grew in size and power, her hunger only increasing with each bite. She consumed so much light that she became swollen and bloated, her form expanding to monstrous proportions. But Ungoliant's hunger was not sated, even after devouring the light of the two trees. She turned on Morgoth himself, demanding that he fulfill his promise of feeding her even more light. When Morgoth refused, she attempted to devour him too in her madness and greed. It was only through the intervention of Morgoth's Balrog servants that she was driven off, and she fled into the darkest corners of the world, far from the reach of even the Dark Lord. Ungoliant's fate after this event is shrouded in mystery. She is said to have hidden in the southern wastes of Middle-earth, in the forgotten land of Avathar, where she continued to spawn her monstrous offspring. Shelob, the great spider encountered by Frodo and Sam in Cirith Ungol, is believed to be one of her descendants. The terror inspired by Shelob, however, pales in comparison to the true horror of Ungoliant herself. Ungoliant represents a force of destruction unlike any other in Middle-earth. She is not driven by ambition or malice, like Sauron or Morgoth, but by a primal, insatiable hunger. Her very existence is a perversion of nature, as she consumes light and life, leaving only darkness and death in her wake. Her hunger knows no bounds, and her power grows with each act of consumption. The idea that such a creature could exist, lurking in the dark corners of the world, waiting to devour all that is beautiful and good, is a truly terrifying thought. There are few beings in Middle-earth capable of inspiring the same level of fear and awe as Ungoliant. Her actions in the First Age, destroying the two trees and plunging the world into darkness, are among the most devastating in all of Tolkien's works. She is the embodiment of the Void, a creature whose very nature is to consume and destroy. Even in her apparent defeat and retreat, Ungoliant's legacy continues to haunt Middle-earth, a reminder that some horrors are ancient and eternal, and that darkness can never be fully vanquished. Ungoliant's influence persists through her descendants, such as Shelob, but none of them come close to matching the sheer terror and destructive power of their ancestor. She remains one of the most enigmatic and frightening monsters in Middle-earth, a symbol of the unrelenting hunger of evil and the fragility of light in the face of overwhelming darkness.